After getting this far, I understand that you're probably anxious to get your business up and running as quickly as possible. If so, you may be very keen to know how you can start attracting potential clients or customers as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, in doing this, you'd be getting way ahead of yourself. This is definitely not the first step to take because there's something far more important that you must do before you even think about offering your services to site owners, even though they may be fairly desperate for someone like you to come along. This is because, having watched this far, one factor should have become abundantly clear to you: the absolutely critical necessity of finding high quality ghostwriters with whom you can work, and you must do this before you do anything else. Trying to launch your business without having high quality ghostwriters behind you upon whom you can rely is a classic case of putting the cart before the horse, something that will inevitably doom your efforts to failure before you've even got started. You know, it's no exaggeration to suggest that the quality of the people you choose to work with will make or break your business. You must therefore be prepared to spend as much time as necessary on this stage of the business establishment process. You simply cannot afford to work with people whose work is of poor quality, or those who don't understand the meaning of timeliness and deadlines, because poor quality ghostwriters will destroy your business before it's even got off the ground. Furthermore, you must also appreciate that when I suggested that there was an awful lot of very poor quality freelance workers in the market, I'm not exaggerating or joking. Without wishing to paint a picture that's unnecessarily bleak or grim, for every good ghostwriter I've discovered over the past few years, there have been at least one, two, maybe three who are not up to scratch for one reason or another, and you've got to weed these people out at the very beginning. The key here is, don't be tempted to rush things too quickly. Take your time and make sure that you do the job properly, because this is the only way of guaranteeing that your business is around for the long term. It may only take a day, or it may take a week, or it may even take a month, although it's never taken me that long, to find a ghostwriter or several ghostwriters with whom you can safely entrust your business. It's understandable that you want to start generating income as quickly as possible, and with a bit of luck, it shouldn't take you more than a few days to do so. Nevertheless, even if it does, do not be tempted to rush or to work with someone in whom you do not have 100% confidence, because doing so is always a fatal error in business. You need to find these people and you need to test them before thinking of moving one single step further. Now, here is how you do both of these things. When you start looking for ghostwriters or freelance workers, you're going to come into contact with people from many different countries, all of whom have different characters, different qualities, and different characteristics. Some of these people will be far more likable or amenable than others, and as it's quite natural that you'll want to work with people who are pleasant to work with, it's likely that you'll naturally gravitate towards these more likable individuals. In my experience, this is often a mistake. Why it should be that the more likable people often seem to be less reliable at one and the same time, I've no idea, but as a fact, this is what I've seen on far too many occasions. For this reason, you must establish an objective series of specific tests that every freelancer or ghostwriter you come into contact with must pass. You must also discipline yourself to stick to your selection criteria as rigidly as possible, because as soon as you start allowing human judgment or emotion to interfere in the selection process, you begin to make mistakes. These are the 6 criteria that you should use when selecting ghostwriters with whom you're willing to trust the long-term fortunes of your business. First of all, you have to test their ability to write high-quality English. It must be grammatically correct, and the spelling must be spot on too. They must be capable of following specific instructions to the letter, and I do mean to the letter. They must have the ability to undertake unsupervised research and to come up with the right answers or information. They must understand the idea of deadlines and punctuality and be willing to do whatever it takes to meet deadlines whenever necessary. When you ask for original content, this is what you must receive each and every time. And finally, you want to know how determined and tough any applicant is, how willing they are to go out on a limb to make sure that they get the work done. Okay, so if a ghostwriter that you're thinking of working with can satisfy all of these criteria, then you may well have someone with whom you can work. Let us look at each individual step to highlight some of the factors to be aware of. And the first one is the ability to use proper English. One problem of working with English speakers from all over the world is that in many countries the English that's spoken has over the years been infiltrated with many local idioms, inflections and patterns of speech. Now, while there's nothing particularly wrong with this, it does mean that many of these peculiarities pass into their written English as well. Now, this doesn't necessarily disbar someone from being a top quality ghostwriter, but it is something to be aware of and to look out for. And the next thing is their ability to follow instructions. When you use ghostwriters, you'll be asking them to do a specific job that your customers asked for. If your ghostwriter decides to use their initiative by doing something that's slightly different to what was asked for, then this is unlikely to be satisfactory for the client. This is not a position that you want to be in, so your ghostwriter must be capable of doing exactly what you ask of them every time. Now, their research ability is vital. Every time you pass a job on to your ghostwriter, they must be able to do the research on their own. You do not want them asking you where they can find the appropriate information, the answers that they need, or whatever it is. And the old saying is true, time is money. They absolutely must have the capability and the willingness to take on board that the timekeeping and deadline meeting that you demand may be very different to what they're used to. As an example, whereas there are a few countries where punctuality is expected, England, Japan and so on, there are many other countries where timekeeping is a bit more flexible. And you can't afford to work with someone who can't produce work on time. Now, only unique content has any value. When written materials are published on the net, they only have genuine value the first time they're published. After that, the all-important search engines like Google will more or less ignore these materials when they're republished anywhere else. Consequently, your clients are using your services because they only want unique content, and it's your job to make sure that's what they get. And finally, there's their determination and character. When your ghostwriter could be working thousands of miles away from you, it's important to know that they have the character to come through when things get tough, that they're motivated, that they're a self-starter with enough discipline to get what needs to be done finished. While you can threaten your ghostwriter, cajole them, praise them, and even offer them more money to make sure that they do what you want, you can't ever force them to do your bidding. Thus, having a strong character and a high level of determination is extremely important, as it is people with strong characters and determination upon whom you can rely most heavily when the going gets tough. In my own experience, there is little doubt that the best way of finding reliable ghostwriters is through a personal recommendation from someone that you know has worked with this person in the past. As with most situations in life, if you know someone who can recommend a freelancer or a ghostwriter that they've worked with, this is almost inevitably going to be the most successful way of finding someone on whom you can rely. Failing this, the next place I would turn to is probably the leading online marketing forum, the Warrior Forum, and you can find it here at warriorforum.com. And this is arguably the largest online marketing community on the net, a place where thousands of high-quality online marketers and content creators congregate. The fact that the Warrior Forum is such a high-quality resource is, however, both a blessing and something of a curse as far as you're concerned. On the blessing side of the argument, anyone you can find to create content through the Warrior Forum is likely to be a very competent writer, someone who is extremely au fait with the demands of online marketing. Furthermore, it's much more likely that you'll recruit a native English speaker through the Warrior Forum, and that they are likely, although certainly not guaranteed, to be honest and reliable. There are, however, several problems with using the Warrior Forum in this way as well. Firstly, because the majority of leading online marketers are a member of this forum, they don't really need your services to find a writer for them through the site. Secondly, it's far less likely that you'll be able to find someone who's willing to work for rock-bottom prices, particularly because the majority of members are native English speakers from the USA, UK, Australia and Canada. That's why it's always worth taking a look at what's on offer in the Warrior Special Offers section. If you scroll down here, you can see you've got the Warrior Special Offers forum, and these are all special offers that are available to members. And you can also look in this section here, the Warriors for Hire, and you can find lots of people on the forum here that you can recruit. But the truth is that you may find that there's nobody suitable for exactly what you're looking for. However, this is not the last that we're going to see of the Warrior Forum. Of far more interest are likely to be the two main outsourcing sites, which can be found at Elance, which is elance.com, and freelancer.com. This used to be called getafreelancer.com, and if you type that in, you'll still come to the site. And both of these sites are places where there are thousands of freelancers looking for work, with many of them being full-time or part-time ghostwriters. Now, you can use these sites in one of two different ways. The first option is for you to browse the profiles posted by individual freelancers before selecting people whose skills or abilities seem to be a good match for the project that you have in mind. In my experience, however, this option is really the best way of doing things unless you want to work with one of the top freelancers on the site. Assuming that this is unlikely to be the case at this stage, the top freelancers are usually the most expensive as well, it would not make much sense to seek a ghostwriter or ghostwriters in this way. Instead, what you should do is the second option, which is to post a job on the site and invite bids or tenders for the work that you have on offer. In this way, you can construct the project in such a way that it tests all the criteria that I proposed earlier on in the series. By doing so, you weed out a large percentage of would-be ghostwriters who are not going to come up to scratch before narrowing it down to a short list with whom you can take things one step further. The first things you need to do to start the process of finding a suitable ghostwriter is to create and post a test project to one or both of the freelancing sites I mentioned earlier. As you're focused on finding other online business people and entrepreneurs as clients, it follows that you should start off by looking for writers who specialize in this particular market area. To do this, what you're going to do is advertise an initial project made up of 5 articles in the particular market sector or niche in which you're going to focus. For example, if you're going to sell your services to internet marketers, then this test project will be 5 articles on the subject of internet marketing. Once you've selected a writer, this is a project that you're actually going to ask them to undertake and pay them for. But although you should expect to pay around $25 to $30 for 5 articles of 400 to 500 words, you should not advertise how much you're willing to pay, because part of the selection process will be based on the amount of money potential ghostwriters are asking for. At the stage where you've chosen an individual writer with whom you think you can work, you'll have to provide them with specific article information such as titles, any keyword terms on which you want the articles to be focused, any specific requirements that you have, and so on. When you add your product to either of the freelance sites highlighted earlier, you can expect to start receiving bids within a few hours, and depending on the attractiveness of the test project you're proposing, you could easily see over 20 bids for the work on both or either of the sites. You can keep the job offer open for a few days to build up a list of potential ghostwriters with whom you might end up working. Once you've accumulated a suitable list, it's time to move to the next stage, which is where you start applying the selection criteria that we stipulated earlier. and we'll continue this video in part 2.